Story 1. When they text with those weird fonts that you can barely read, specifically on TikTok. I got into an argument with someone there and couldn't even take them seriously because everything was typed out like this but in bold font. Story 2. Maybe I'm just judgmental, but many of the comments seem reasonable to judge, if you ask me, such as treating waiters and janitors poorly or eating with their mouths open. Story 3. I don't know how to phrase this, but building a personality based on trauma and doing nothing to address it is harmful. Trauma is difficult to overcome, but it is your responsibility to put yourself on a path toward healing. Story 4. I perform blood draws at work occasionally. When I use the alcohol wipe to clean the arm crease and the wipe turns brown from dirt and grime, I make a judgment. Story 5. When customers leave a product they do not want on a shelf, it is often far from where they originally found it, especially with cold or frozen food. Story 6. People who say, I could care less. It should be, I couldn't care less. Edited to add that some Reddit users in the comments have informed me that it can be used both ways. I am standing down. Story 7. Talking and eating with their mouth open. Seriously, who wants to see mashed corn flying everywhere? Getting dangerously close to your plate. Story 8. Taking your children into a restaurant and allowing them to make a huge mess on the table, seats, and floor. Then they all walk out and leave the mess. Story 9. How someone speaks can be a decent indication of their education level, but it is not always fair to judge someone on that because it could have been out of their control. Story 10. Listening to music or watching a video in public without headphones makes my eye twitch, and I suddenly completely understand entitled people. Story 11. Not proofreading when using speech-to-text. Why should I spend more time deciphering your nonsense than you spent speaking into your phone? Story 12. When people think their opinion is the only one that matters. The know-it-all people who are really rude about it. Story 13. I know people are busy and have lives, but when they do not read anything other than text messages or social media, I am referring to books, articles, newspapers, and magazines. Story 14. People who complain about how hard it is to be a parent and how they have no money, yet have more children. Story 15. This might be controversial, but being an online activist is different from actual activists who use social media as a tool. Some people constantly post about being aware of every tragedy or major event around the world, but do not take action or raise awareness about ways to make a difference. I feel this creates a sense that people must have surface-level awareness of every issue instead of putting in concentrated effort and knowledge to accomplish meaningful change. Story 16. How loud they are in a public space, especially with other people around. Not everyone wants to hear the music you play in your car. This is not a neighborhood party. Not everyone needs to listen to your story when on the bus or in the mall. Not everyone should have to endure you being unable to speak at a normal volume. Story 17. Participating in sexist or racist religions. I know that most religious people were raised that way, but I cannot help it. I immediately feel sad for the children, women, and disadvantaged groups, and mistrust for adult men and privileged groups. Story 18. Hot take, but if I find out you are religious, I am judging a bit. As someone who was raised religiously and is no longer, I just find the whole thing delusional to a certain degree. Story 19. People who are in public, especially in a restaurant, and talk on their phones using the speaker are obnoxious. Please stop doing it. Story 20. Bringing non-service dogs into places and lying about how they are service dogs, as well as buying fake service dog vests online. Story 21. I'm going to get a lot of criticism for this, but destination weddings when the couple has no connection to that destination. Getting married in Italy or Santorini, for example. I always feel those weddings become more about the trip and the destination than the actual couple getting married. Then I wonder how long that marriage will last. Sorry everyone, I just find it really odd. But if it is any consolation, I am likely alone in this. Story 22. I judge when people elongate consonants in text messages that are not elongated in speech. If you say what in an exasperated tone and text me what with repeated letters instead of what with elongated vowels, it makes me imagine you speaking that way. No ma'am, you are not a sprinkler. Story 23. People who are overly religious. I know I should not judge what they do in their own time unless they try to force it on others, but I just feel like it is ridiculous with all we know about science. Story 24. If they are a loudspeaker, I understand that some people just get excited. However, I think it is a pet peeve of mine when this happens frequently. Story 25. People who do not put shopping carts back correctly. I judge those who take them all the way to the cart return, then do a poor job putting them back more than I do people who just leave them by their parking space. Story 26. Multiple children with multiple partners. You do not need to have a child with everyone you sleep with. Story 27. Someone saying, I don't get involved with politics. Come on. The people in charge can affect almost every single thing that happens in your life and the lives of everyone around you. Saying you don't care or don't get involved enough to care about what happens locally is just sticking your head in the sand. I know people have busy lives and many things happening, so yeah, I shouldn't judge them, but I do. Story 28. Parents who let their child listen to videos or movies on a phone or tablet without headphones in a public area are being inconsiderate. Headphones are inexpensive and easy to carry in a purse. Children can also play games on mute. There are many ways to handle these situations without forcing everyone around to listen to your child's videos. I am a parent, so I understand the challenges, but this behavior is thoughtless. Several examples come to mind. At dance class, there is always at least one mother allowing her child to watch videos without headphones. At church, a mother behind me had her child watching videos on her lap without headphones, and I could hardly hear the message. At a quiet show in an amusement park, the same thing happened. People paid to be there for the show but could not hear it. Story 29. People with 3 or more children under the age of 3, and so on for the numbers and ages. This couple is putting the mother's health at risk by getting pregnant once a year, increasing the chances that their ever-growing family might lose a parent because they did not use birth control and had frequent unprotected sex. Story 30. When people adopt a pet they really cannot afford because they are unemployed or working part-time at a food service job, and then post fundraising campaigns when the pet inevitably has a medical issue they cannot pay for. Story 31. Everything. Their diets, their driving, their spending habits, their food, the temperature of their homes, how and what they recycle, and their relationships. But I try to keep my mouth shut, and it usually works. Story 32. People who look at something on their phone and say something like, "That is so funny," or "I cannot believe that," to themselves intentionally as a way to get you to ask about it, so they can tell you about it. Just tell me what you saw. Why are you baiting me to ask you about it? Oddly specific, I know, but it happens often and it drives me up the wall. Story 33. Being a pick-me, I know what it is like to desire emotional connection, but I will die before I act like a pick-me. Story 34. Michael Kors handbags. I cannot help myself. I just dislike them. They have excessive logos and resemble designs found at Target. Story 35. Being depressed is challenging. My biggest struggle is trying to understand people who choose to wallow in misery and think negatively all the time. Life does not suddenly get better. Each day, you have to choose to move in the opposite direction of what is pulling you down. It is an everyday practice. So when people constantly complain but do not do the work of lifting themselves, I do not drain my own energy trying to support them. Story 36. I automatically prepare myself for any white person with locks to smell unpleasant. It has been rare for someone to prove me wrong. Story 37. People have no common sense whatsoever, and if they do not know something, they will not look it up. They will just remain ignorant. Story 38. Helicopter and bulldozer parents are the reason their children grow up with various anxiety issues and a lack of coping skills. Story 39. When someone says, "I'm not really into music," it makes me wonder, what do you enjoy? The sound of your own ego echoing? Story 40. People overspend, especially when they are deeply in debt and have children. I am not referring to using a credit card to pay the electricity bill. I am talking about having a second mortgage, 2-car loans, for credit cards close to their limits, being unable to park in the garage because of clutter, or having kitchen cabinets full of 8 different kinds of trendy cups. It is excessive. Story 41. I know I shouldn't judge too much, but people who don't cover small things for you really grate my nerves. They don't have to, but being someone who was raised to do so, it bothers me a lot. For example, say you are at the store and planning to grab some things. A friend you will see that day asks you to get them a pack of gum. Do you charge them for the gum? I wouldn't. It's that level of exactness. If you add an item to your order that your friend wants and has already paid you for, do you make them pay for the shipping as well if it's really low? It's just that extra level of stinginess. Story 42. This one will probably get me some criticism, but people who wear overly religious or Christian shirts, like the Simply Southern style shirts with prayers and Bible verses, or who have very Christian bumper stickers, in my personal experience, are mostly just Sunday Christians. Feels very performative. In reality, they are not that Christian at all. I have family who are all good Christians, and they are some of the nastiest, pettiest people alive. I do not care what religion people follow, but I find it obnoxious when it is in my face and I have to deal with someone trying to save me while I am stuck listening to them because I am at work and cannot escape. Story 43. Wearing large cowboy hats in official settings. Sheriffs and government officials in southern states often wear these oversized hats with wide brims that might require Federal Aviation Administration authorization. While this may be common in certain circles, to an observer, it may appear as if the hat is worn to conceal a bald spot, without any knowledge about the individual. Story 44. I want to preface this by saying I greatly blame my mother for this, but I quietly judge people's messy houses. This is humorous because my house is rarely spotless. I also always berate myself when I notice these unkind thoughts. Story 45. Religion. I automatically deduct intelligence points if I find out someone is religious. Many people are pragmatic and do not adhere to the worst aspects of religion. I went to a church like that as a child. However, the majority of religion I have seen is not like the experience I had with our gay priest and imam giving sermons. Church was a part of my childhood, but neither of my parents believed in that church. It was about the local community. Both of my parents are deists. I am an atheist. I am glad that my local community's understanding of church was the place I attended. However, organized religion generally has a history of showing how many people it hurts and kills. Story 46. I judge drug addicts in the streets, even though I know I should not. I have compassion fatigue, and the situation has gotten out of hand where I live. I understand it is a complex issue, but I am tired of people overdosing in public spaces, affecting innocent people and draining resources from the community. Story 47. Smoking cigarettes causes a strong odor on their clothes, cars, and nearby areas such as stores or houses. It reminds me of unpleasant memories and smells very bad. Additionally, there are significant health risks, and it is a complete waste of money with no real benefit except avoiding withdrawal symptoms. Story 48. Parents who allow their children to become overweight. I know I should not really judge them because I do not have children myself. Story 49. Those who lack empathy. If you cannot put yourself in someone else's shoes, especially those who are suffering, I have zero tolerance for you. Story 50. This is probably a common answer here, but poor grammar skills. I know some people just do not have the education or maybe the innate skills to be naturally adept in basic grammar. So, I do get upset with myself for feeling this way. My mother-in-law is a prime example of this. She is one of the sweetest, kindest, and most caring people I know, but she has terrible grammar and also says a lot of common words incorrectly. For example, she pronounces shih tzu as shtitzu and polyp as palip. She has many more. She often says, I seen, which is probably my biggest pet peeve. I have to remember that she did not go to college and spent her whole adult life on a farm, cut off from the world with not much of a social life. Still, my brain screams. Story 51. I understand judging people for making their trauma their entire personality, but healing is not linear. Also, as harsh as it sounds, certain voices instantly make me tune out. I wish I did not, but it is like nails on a chalkboard sometimes. Story 52. Getting cut off in traffic. 99 times out of 100, they are not malicious, just impatient. But the things I say out loud to myself about them are quite vile. Story 53. Picky eaters. I know not everyone has to have a super expansive palate when it comes to trying new things, but if you are a person who goes to a nice restaurant and orders chicken fingers or other items from a children's menu, then I have no time for you. Story 54. Being a follower when it comes to things that do not matter, such as only liking TikTok sound music or buying Stanleys and so on. Story 55. Having notifications switched on their phone and receiving millions of notifications. Particularly if they are over 30 and have no children, it is unlikely to be a critical emergency. It is a real insight into how people's brains work. It is also funny when they try to show you a gig or a reel on their phone, but you cannot see much due to the endless feed of messages from 5 different applications from various suitors. Pro tip: put your phone on Do Not Disturb before hanging out with someone. It is good manners. Story 56. Poor hygiene. I know some people cannot help it or have no choice, but other people's body odor is one of the worst smells to exist to me, especially because I have a really sensitive sense of smell. Story 57. Using artificial intelligence to write work emails, especially if the message is full of fake enthusiasm or gratitude. If I read, "Excited about making this a success together one more time," I am going to snap. Story 58. Picky eaters. I understand if it's allergies, if someone is vegan, or if they have a disorder. I mean, otherwise normal people who have the palate of a spoiled toddler and refuse to try food for irrational reasons or refuse to eat anything slightly uncomfortable to their palate. I know it's not really that important and I shouldn't really care, but to me, it feels like an immature behavior typical of spoiled children. I assume this person is deficient in other areas of their personality and life based on it. To explain the difference between what I'm talking about and normal preferences, I will go have dinner with some friends, and one person might not like a particular vegetable. That's normal. But if they don't like that vegetable or any other vegetable, won't eat the appetizer everyone is sharing because it has tomatoes, order something with 5 ingredients excluded because they don't eat this or that, and end up with a plate of mashed potatoes and chicken nuggets or whatever, in my experience, 9 times out of 10, this person ends up being someone I do not enjoy talking to or spending time with. Story 59. I judge religious people. I hate to admit it, but I have been an atheist since I was a kid and during COVID-19 started considering myself somewhat of an anti-theist. I do not respect everyone's beliefs, especially when those beliefs are used to shape our government or affect people's rights to health and safety. Enough is enough. I judge religious people harshly. I do not trust their judgment, and I am not sorry for feeling that way. Story 60. Nose picking while talking to people is just plain rude. It involves shoving a finger up a nostril and picking away in someone's face without a tissue or any thought about where the waste goes. I had a boss who did that. I finally had to ask him to please not pick his nose while talking to me. He had no idea that doing so was disgustingly ill-mannered or even that he was doing it at all. Gum chewing is also unpleasant, especially gum popping with the mouth open and spit flying. Story 61. These are almost all valid reasons to judge people, so here is one that actually answers the question. I judge adult men who wear baseball hats inside a house. Story 62. I might receive criticism for this, but as a Christian, I sometimes question the intelligence behind certain beliefs. The Bible seems illogical to me, and many Christians I have known lack awareness about various topics. Story 63. People who call their female child sis or sissy. I cannot explain it, but it is like nails on a chalkboard, and I immediately judge them. Story 64. People who are obsessed with their ancestry and lineage make it their entire personality. I have a colleague who mentions that she is from a royal family and actually a princess in every conversation. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.